I was standing in the hallway just outside my own kitchen, an envelope in my hand with $3.8 million printed across the top, when I heard my husband say quietly, "We just need her to sign the papers. After that, the money is ours." My daughter let out a soft laugh. She won't see it coming. She trusts us too much. I didn't move. Not because I was frozen, but because I needed to hear the rest. There's a moment when something feels wrong, but you don't want to believe it yet. That was that moment. They had already decided who I was. I kept thinking about that sentence. Not the words themselves, but how easily they said them. Like I wasn't even part of the conversation anymore. And they were already moving without me. For a moment, everything inside me went still. Not racing, not breaking. Just gone quiet. I had rushed home to share something good, something that was supposed to change our lives. Instead, I stood there listening to them plan around me, like I was already out of the picture. Why were they talking about my money like it didn't belong to me anymore? I had left St. Anne's Medical Center an hour early that day. I remember smiling the entire drive home. But I didn't walk in. 42 years of early mornings, long nights, missed birthdays, and tired feet. And now, after all of it, they handed me a retirement package worth $3.8 million. I kept repeating the number in my head while I drove. 3.8 million. I had spent decades building that security. Not all at once, little by little, shift by shift. I imagined walking through the front door and saying, "We're safe now." I imagined Henry lifting me off the ground like he used to when we were younger. I imagined Emily smiling, maybe even crying a little. I had played that moment in my head so many times that everything I had worked for had meant something. I didn't realize I was the only one imagining it that way. Instead, I stood there frozen, listening. Henry's voice came again, low and certain. "Once she signs the transfer, we move everything. Charlie already has the account ready." Emily hesitated. "And what about Mom?" A small pause. "She'll be fine," Henry said with a quiet sigh. "We'll say it didn't work out. Bad investment. At her age, what is she really going to do?" Something dropped inside me. At her age, I'm Ruth Sterling. I'm 68 years old. Yes, my hair has turned gray. Yes, I move a little slower than I used to. But I am not invisible. And I am not someone you can trick and erase. If you've ever trusted someone and didn't realize what was really happening, tell me where you're watching from. Stay with me. What I heard next changed everything. Emily's voice softened. "Dad, are you sure this is okay? That's all she has." Henry didn't hesitate. "Do you want your loans gone or not? The house you've been talking about, this is our chance." Then he said it. "She owes us." That's when it stopped feeling like a misunderstanding. Not help, not love, just entitlement. That was the moment everything became clear. They didn't think they were betraying me. They thought they were taking what they deserved. My hands started shaking, but no tears came. Not yet. What I felt was colder than that. Like something inside me had cracked clean in half. The envelope in my hand suddenly felt heavier than it should have. Not like a gift, like a target. I stepped back slowly and moved toward the front door, careful not to make a sound. I opened it, then closed it again. Louder this time. Like I had just arrived. I forced brightness into my voice. "Honey, I'm home." I heard chairs shift quickly. A pause, then movement. Henry walked out first, already smiling. "Hey, you're home early." Emily followed behind him, her expression just a little too bright. "Hi, Mom." I held up the envelope. I have some news. Henry's eyes locked onto it immediately. What kind of news? I gave a small nod. My retirement package came in. It's more than we expected. Emily leaned forward. How much? I didn't answer right away. I looked at them carefully. Really looked. Excitement. Anticipation. Something sharper underneath, but not love. 3.8 million, I said. Henry let out a low whistle. That's incredible. He pulled me into a hug, tight, too tight. Emily clapped her hands together. Mom, that's amazing. And just hours ago, I would have believed every bit of it. I smiled back at them. But inside, something had already changed. That night, long after they went to bed, I sat alone in the living room. The house was quiet. The same house I paid for. The same house where I packed Emily's lunches, signed her school forms, stayed up waiting for her to come home. The same kitchen where Henry and I used to dance when life felt simple. I replayed their words over and over. She just needs to sign. She owes us. At her age? And slowly, something else came into focus. This didn't start today. It had been building for a long time, like a crack in glass you don't notice, until it spreads too far to ignore. Henry had been distant for years, always talking about business ideas with Charlie, always chasing something more, even when we already had enough. Emily had been carrying something too. Frustration, quiet resentment. You loved your job more than us, she once told me. Maybe I had worked too much. Maybe I had missed moments I can't get back. But I never stopped loving them. Everything I did for this family. And now they were planning to take everything from me. I sat there for a long time, letting that truth settle. Then I stood up, walked to my desk, and opened my laptop. If they thought I was too old to notice, too trusting to question, they were about to learn something else about me. I called my financial advisor early the next morning before anyone else woke up. His name is Edward Collins from Collins Wealth Advisory. He has managed my accounts for over 15 years. Mrs. Sterling, he said gently, his tone shifting the moment he understood. If what you're telling me is accurate, don't sign anything, not a single document. We can move the funds into a protected trust, under your name only, no shared access. For the first time since the night before, I felt something steady return. Not comfort, not relief, just control. Do it, I said. By the time Henry and Emily woke up that morning, the money was already gone from the joint account. Safe, locked, untouchable. At breakfast, Henry leaned over and kissed my cheek like nothing had happened. I was thinking, he said casually, maybe we should sit down today and go over some investment options. I spread butter slowly across my toast, keeping my hands steady. I gave him a soft smile. That sounds like a good idea. Emily jumped in quickly, almost too quickly. Mom, I know someone. My friend's dad works in investments. He doubles money fast, really fast. I almost laughed. Of course, I said calmly. Let's all sit down tonight and talk it through. They both relaxed after that. I could see it, like a weight had lifted off their shoulders, but they didn't realize I had already moved mine. That afternoon, I went to see a lawyer. Her name is Diane Mercer. Sharp eyes, sharper instincts. I told her everything. She didn't interrupt. She just leaned forward, listening carefully. Then she said, very clearly, if they try to pressure you, we document it. If they attempt anything deceptive or coercive, that becomes a legal issue. Fraud is not a small matter. Fraud. The word sat heavy in my chest. Was that really what my own family had planned? That evening, we sat down at the dining table. Henry placed a stack of papers in front of me. Emily sat beside him, quiet now. different. I noticed something right away. She wouldn't look at me. Henry cleared his throat. This is a joint venture opportunity, he said smoothly. If you sign here, we can move the funds and start generating returns immediately. I picked up the document and read it slowly, line by line. It didn't take long. This wasn't an investment agreement. It was a transfer authorization. They weren't planning to grow the money with me. They were planning to move it away from me. My hands didn't shake this time. I looked up and asked quietly, "Why isn't my name listed as the primary owner on this document?" Henry froze. Emily's face drained of color. And in that moment, I saw it clearly. They didn't think I would read it. They didn't think I would understand it. They didn't think I would question anything. Henry forced a small laugh. It's just standard wording, legal language. I folded the paper carefully and placed it back on the table. No, I said calmly. It's not. Silence filled the room. I stood up slowly, and then I said the one thing they weren't ready for. I heard everything you said in the kitchen yesterday. No one spoke. Emily gasped. Henry's chair scraped sharply against the floor. That was the moment everything broke open. His face shifted almost instantly, from surprise to anger. "What are you talking about?" he snapped. I held his gaze. "I heard you. The transfer, Charlie's account, the plan to tell me it failed." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "Mom, it's not like that." I lifted my hand, gently but firmly. "Don't lie to me." Henry stood up. "You were listening to us? In your own house?" I felt something rise inside me then, something I hadn't felt before. Not fear, clarity. "You were planning to take my money," I said quietly. The word hung there, heavy. Emily broke first, her voice shaking. "We just needed help." Henry's jaw tightened. "It's family money." I met his eyes. "No," I said. "That's my retirement, not yours." The room felt smaller, tighter, like the walls were closing in. Emily whispered, barely audible, "Dad said you wouldn't notice." I didn't say anything right away. Would you have confronted them in that moment? Or stayed quiet like I did? Tell me, and stay with me. What happened next, I wasn't prepared for. That sentence stayed with me. That sentence broke something in me. Henry turned sharply toward her. "Stop talking." But it was too late. They thought I wouldn't notice. They thought I was too old, too trusting, too tired. They were wrong. And standing there, looking at the two people I loved more than anything, I realized the truth. This wasn't just about money. It was about respect. It was about being erased while I was still standing right there. And it was about what I was going to do next. Because there was something they didn't know, something I hadn't told them. They had no idea what I had already done that morning. And when they found out, nothing in this family would ever be the same again. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, stay with me. Because what happened next changed everything. The next morning, Henry tried something worse. And that's when I knew this wasn't a mistake, this was a plan. And I was just getting started. I woke up before sunrise the next day. Sleep didn't come easily. Her words kept echoing in my head. I sat on the edge of my bed and looked down at my hands. These hands had worked for 42 years, held my daughter when she was a baby, cooked meals, paid bills, signed forms, kept everything running through every storm. They stayed steady. And now the people I did it all for thought I wouldn't even see it happening. I walked quietly down the hallway. The house felt different, colder. Henry was already in the kitchen. That alone told me something was off. He never woke up early unless there was a reason. He was on the phone. I stayed just out of sight. Yes, he said under his breath. She knows we talked. No, she hasn't signed anything, not yet. I'll handle it today. Not yet. So he still thought he could make me do it. I stepped forward, letting my presence be known. Good morning, I said calmly. Henry flinched just slightly and ended the call too quickly. Morning. Who were you talking to this early? I asked, pouring myself a cup of coffee. My brother, he said too fast. Of course. I sat across from him, wrapping my hands around the mug. Henry, I said gently, we need to be honest. He leaned back in his chair. I agree. But it didn't feel like agreement. It felt like strategy. A few minutes later, Emily walked in. Her eyes were red, her face pale. She looked at me like she wasn't sure what she would find. Mom, she whispered. I gave her a small, steady smile. Sit down, sweetheart. We sat together at the table, just like we had thousands of times before. I took a breath. What happened yesterday hurt me, I said quietly. Not because of the money, but because you were both planning something behind my back. Emily broke immediately. Dad said it was temporary, she cried. He said we'd give it back. That's right, Henry cut in quickly. It was just a smart move. The investment was solid. I looked at him. Then why was my name removed from ownership? He didn't answer. The silence that followed said enough. You don't understand business, he said finally. I did understand. Maybe more than he thought. That's what made it harder to stand there and listen to him pretend this was something else. It stayed with me. I've managed hospital budgets for years, I replied calmly. I understand numbers very well. Emily looked between us, overwhelmed. Mom, we thought you wouldn't want to deal with it. We were trying to help. Help? I repeated softly. By taking control of everything? I stood up slowly. Let me make something clear. They both looked at me. The money is no longer in the joint account. Their heads snapped up. What do you mean? Henry demanded. It's been moved, I said, into a protected trust, under my name only. That was when I realized they had already planned this much further than I thought. The room changed instantly. Emily looked scared. Henry looked furious. You did that without telling me? He snapped. I held his gaze. Without telling you? I echoed quietly. You were planning to move it without telling me. His hand slammed down on the table. I'm your husband. And I'm your wife, I said, just as steady. Not your bank. Emily stood up, shaking. This is tearing us apart. No, I said softly. The plan to take from me is what did that. Henry's face flushed red. No one was taking anything. Then why did you say I wouldn't notice? I asked. He had no answer. So he shifted. You worked your whole life and you were never there, he said coldly. Maybe we deserve some of it. There it was, the truth underneath everything. I turned to Emily. Is that how you feel? She looked down at her hands. You missed my dance recital, she said quietly. You missed my school plays. You were always tired. Something inside me tightened. I worked to give you everything, I said softly. I didn't want everything, she whispered. I wanted you. For a moment, the anger faded. Only something heavier remained. I reached for her hand. I'm sorry for the times I wasn't there, I said. She looked up, surprised. But taking from me won't fix that. Henry pushed his chair back abruptly. This is ridiculous, he said. We're family. Families share. Families don't trick each other, I replied. He walked out, the door slamming behind him. Emily stayed, crying softly. Mom, I didn't think it would go this far. How far did you think it would go? I asked gently. She hesitated. Dad said Uncle Charlie needed the money. Urgently. My stomach dropped. For what? She swallowed. He's in debt, a lot of debt. Now it made sense. Charlie had always been reckless. Failed businesses, bad decisions. Henry wasn't investing. He was trying to save his brother with my retirement. Emily wiped her tears. Dad said it was temporary, that once Uncle Charlie paid back the people he owed, the kind you don't ignore, we'd get everything back with profit. The words settled heavily in the room. You knew about that? I asked. She nodded slowly. I sat back down, the weight of it sinking in. This wasn't just a bad decision. This was dangerous. Henry walked back into the kitchen. That's enough, he said sharply. Stop putting ideas in her head. Emily flinched. Those aren't ideas, I said firmly. That's reality. He turned toward her. You had no right to tell her that. I stood up. No, I said. She had every right. I held his gaze. I deserve the truth. Henry's voice dropped lower. Charlie made mistakes, he said. We're just trying to help him fix them. Help him by risking everything I had spent a lifetime building. He looked at me, more serious now. If we don't step in, he could get hurt. There it was. Not greed, fear. I felt something inside me shift again. The anger didn't disappear, but it changed. How much does he owe? I asked. Henry hesitated. How much? I pressed. He exhaled slowly. 1.9 million. Emily gasped. Dad, you said it was less. He ignored her. 1.9 million, nearly half of everything I had. Half my life's work. To pay off people who didn't forgive easily. And he expected me to sign it away without question. I walked toward the living room window and looked outside. The sun was rising, quiet, peaceful. Everything looked normal. But inside this house, nothing was. Henry's voice softened. He's my brother. I can't let him get hurt. I turned back to him. And you were willing to hurt me instead? He didn't answer. Emily's voice came out small. Mom, what are we going to do? The question hung in the air. What were we supposed to do? Help Charlie and risk everything? Refuse and leave him to face people like that alone? Call the police? Then something clicked. Henry had already made a call that morning. I'll handle it today. That meant this had already moved beyond talk. I looked at him carefully. Did you promise them anything? He stayed silent. That told me everything. My pulse quickened. Henry, what did you promise? He swallowed. I told Charlie I'd have the first transfer ready by tomorrow. Tomorrow. That meant someone out there was expecting money. And if they didn't get it, they wouldn't wait quietly. A loud knock hit the front door. All three of us froze. Another knock followed, harder this time. Emily grabbed my arm. Who is that? She whispered. Henry didn't move. The knocking came again. Then a voice from outside. Deep, steady. We know you're in there. My stomach dropped. Henry looked at me, and for the first time, I saw real fear in his eyes. And that's when it became clear. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was standing at our door. The knocking didn't stop. It grew louder. Boom, boom, boom. Emily's grip tightened. Mom? Henry looked smaller somehow. Not like the man who used to fix everything. Not like the man who once told me we'd always be okay. Don't open it, he whispered. The voice came again. Henry, we just want to talk. They knew his name. My heartbeat filled my ears. I walked slowly toward the door, even though my legs felt weak. Mom, no, Emily pleaded. I turned back to them. We can't pretend we're not here. Henry grabbed my wrist. If you open that door, you'll make it worse. Worse than what? I asked. Another heavy bang shook the door. I took a breath and leaned toward the peephole. Two men stood outside, one tall and broad, wearing a dark jacket, the other thinner, a cap pulled low over his eyes. Neither looked patient. I stepped back slowly. Henry, I said quietly. Are they the kind of people Charlie owes? He nodded. Emily let out a small cry. The taller man spoke again. We're not leaving until we get answers. Something shifted inside me then. The fear was still there. But something else rose through it. Clarity. This wasn't just about Charlie anymore. These men were here because Henry had promised something that was never his to promise. I straightened my shoulders. We're calling the police, I said firmly. For a second, everything felt too still. There was no going back after that. Henry's eyes widened. No, that'll make it worse for Charlie. Worse for Charlie? I repeated. What about worse for us? The knocking stopped. Silence filled the house. Then the doorbell rang. Slow, long, loud. Emily started crying. Mom, I'm scared. I pulled her into me, holding her tight. I'm scared too, sweetheart, I whispered. But we're not going to let fear control us. I reached for my phone. Henry stepped forward. Wait. I raised my hand. No more secrets. The operator answered. There are two men at my door, I said clearly. They're demanding money. Yes, we're inside. Yes, they know my husband's name. One of the men outside must have heard me. His voice came through the door. We're not threatening anyone, he said. We just want what we were promised. Promised? The word stayed in my head, repeating itself. The operator said officers were on the way, but those next few minutes stretched longer than they should have. Outside, the men didn't leave. One of them checked his phone. The other leaned against the railing like he wasn't in a hurry at all, like he knew exactly how this would play out. Then, in the distance, sirens. Faint at first, then closer. Both men straightened. One muttered something under his breath, and without another word, they turned, walked down the driveway, and got into a black car parked across the street. By the time the police cruiser pulled up, the car was already pulling away. Two officers stepped inside. Henry tried to take control right away. It's just a misunderstanding, he said. A private matter. I stepped forward. No, I said calmly. It's not a misunderstanding. They looked at me. My husband's brother owes dangerous people $1.9 million, I continued, and my husband promised them money from my retirement without my permission. They exchanged a quick look. Mrs. Sterling, did you authorize any transfer? One of them asked. No, I said firmly, and I will not. They took notes, asked a few questions, then told us to call again if the men returned. Be careful, one of them added before they left. But something didn't feel over. The house was quiet again. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't feel safe. Just waiting. When the door closed, the house felt heavier. Emily sat on the couch, hugging a pillow. Henry stood by the window, staring outside like he was still expecting something to happen. I broke the silence. This ends now. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Because for the first time, I wasn't trying to fix anything. I was just done. He turned. You don't understand what Charlie is dealing with. Then explain it to me, I said. He hesitated. Emily looked at him. Dad, just tell her everything. He exhaled and sat down. Charlie got involved in a private betting ring, he said. He thought he could double his money fast. I said nothing. He lost. Then he borrowed to win it back, and lost again. Gambling. So the rumors had been true. How much has he paid back? I asked. Henry's voice lowered. Nothing. The interest keeps growing. And you thought risking my retirement would fix that? He looked at me, tired. I thought once the debt was gone, he'd change. I thought we could rebuild. I shook my head. You were trying to save him from his choices by sacrificing mine. Emily spoke quietly. Dad said if we didn't help, they might hurt Uncle Charlie. I turned to her. Sweetheart, when people make decisions like that, there are consequences. She wiped her tears. So what do we do? The question hung there again. I stood up. First, we are not giving them my money. Henry opened his mouth, but I raised my hand. Second, Charlie needs to face what he's done. That means speaking to a lawyer, maybe even the police. His expression tightened. You'd turn him in? If he's involved in something illegal, yes. He stood up abruptly. He's my brother. And I'm your wife, I said firmly. The one who worked 42 years for that money. Emily looked between us, and for the first time, something shifted in her eyes. Not just fear, understanding. Dad, she said slowly, what if Mom is right? He stared at her. Emily swallowed. We almost lost everything. Those men came to our house. Henry ran his hands through his hair. You don't know what it's like to watch your brother fall apart. I stepped closer. And you don't know what it's like to hear your husband plan to take your life savings behind your back. Silence filled the room. Emily stood up suddenly. I need air. She walked toward the back door. I followed her outside. The backyard was quiet. Birds were still singing, like nothing had happened. Emily sat on the steps and covered her face. Mom, I didn't think it was this serious. I know, I said, sitting beside her. She looked at me with red eyes. Do you hate us? That question stayed with me. Not the words, but the way she said it. Like she already thought she knew the answer. No, I said softly. I'm hurt, but I don't hate you. She leaned into me like she used to when she was little. I was just so angry at you for always working, she said. When Dad said this was our chance, I wanted to believe it. I gently brushed her hair back. Money can't fix old pain, sweetheart. She nodded slowly. Inside, I heard Henry's voice again, low, tense, on the phone. My chest tightened. I stood up and walked back inside. He was pacing now, voice sharp. No, she won't sign. Stop pushing me. I said I'd handle it. He turned and froze when he saw me. I walked closer. Who are you talking to? He hesitated. Charlie. Put him on speaker, I said calmly. He didn't move. Do it, I repeated. Slowly, he pressed the button. A voice filled the room. Henry, I'm in serious trouble. They're not bluffing. I stepped forward. Charlie, I said calm but firm. This is Ruth. There was a long pause on the line. Oh, Charlie said quietly. You need to hear this clearly, I continued, keeping my voice steady. I am not giving you my retirement money. His breathing grew heavier through the speaker. If I don't pay, they're going to hurt me. Then you need to go to the police, I said firmly. You don't understand how these men operate, he snapped. I didn't raise my voice. No, Charlie, you don't understand how this family works. We don't take from each other. Silence. Then he said something that made the air turn cold. If I go down, I'm not going down alone. The line went dead. Henry stared at the phone. What did he mean by that? Emily's voice came softly from the doorway. I didn't answer right away. A chill moved through me. Charlie was desperate, and desperate people make dangerous choices. That evening, just as the sun was setting, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. One message. "We know where your money is." My hands went cold. This wasn't just about Charlie anymore. They were watching us, and this was far from over. I sat at the kitchen table, reading the message again and again as the sky darkened. "We know where your money is." Emily stood beside me. "Mom, who sent that?" I shook my head slowly. "I don't know." Henry paced across the living room. "This is Charlie's fault," he muttered. "He must have told them about the money." I looked up at him. "Or they heard you when you promised them a transfer." Someone had talked. Maybe Charlie. Maybe someone who heard too much. He stopped. "I didn't tell them where the money was," he said quickly. "You didn't have to," I replied. "They only need to know it exists." Emily wrapped her arms around herself. "Are they coming back?" I didn't answer right away. Instead, I picked up my phone and called my financial advisor again. Edward Collins answered on the second ring. "Ruth, is everything all right?" "No," I said calmly, even though my heart was still racing. "I received a threatening message. I need to make sure everything is secured." I could hear him typing. "Your funds are fully protected," he said. "No one can access them without your authorization and a legal review. But if you're being threatened, you should contact law enforcement again." "I already have," I said quietly. I thanked him and hung up. Henry looked different now. Tired. Worn down. "This has gotten out of control," he said. "It was always out of control," I replied. "You just didn't want to see it." Emily stepped forward. "Dad, Uncle Charlie needs help, but not like this." Henry sank into a chair and covered his face. "You don't understand," he said. "Charlie has always been the weak one. I've always had to fix things for him." "And that's the problem," I said gently. "You never let him face the consequences of his choices." He looked up at me. "He's my brother. And I'm your wife." The words settled between us. For the first time, he didn't argue. That night, I barely slept. Around midnight, I heard something outside. A car engine. I moved quietly to the window and pulled the curtain aside just enough to see. The same black car. Parked across the street. My heartbeat picked up. They were still there, watching. I went back to the bedroom and gently shook Henry awake. "They're outside again," I whispered. He sat up immediately. We both moved to the window. The headlights were off, but I could see two shapes inside. Emily's bedroom light flicked on down the hall. She must have heard us. "Mom?" she called softly. I walked to her room. "Stay inside," I said calmly. "Lock your door." "Are they here?" she whispered. "Yes," I said. "But we're safe." I went back to the living room and picked up my phone again. This time, I didn't hesitate. I called the police. When the patrol car turned onto our street, the black car pulled away once more. The officers came inside again. One of them looked more serious this time. "Ma'am, if this continues, we may need to involve detectives. This is starting to look like intimidation." That word, intimidation, made everything feel heavier. After the officers left, Henry sat down at the kitchen table, shoulders low. "This is my fault," he said quietly. "Yes," I answered. Emily inhaled slightly at how direct I was, but I softened my tone. "It's your fault because you tried to fix this with secrecy and lies, not because you love your brother." Henry looked up at me. "I was scared," he admitted. "Scared Charlie would get hurt. Scared I'd lose him." And now you almost lost me, I said. He closed his eyes. I never meant for this to happen. I know, I said gently, but meaning well doesn't undo the damage. The next morning, I made a decision. We're going to see Charlie today, I said. Henry looked surprised. Why? Because this doesn't get solved through whispers and phone calls. Emily nodded slowly. I want to come too. An hour later, we drove across town. Charlie's apartment building looked worn down. Faded paint, cracked windows. Henry knocked. The door opened slowly. Charlie stood there. He looked older than I remembered. Tired. His eyes red like he hadn't slept. You shouldn't have come, he said. We stepped inside anyway. The apartment told its own story. Bills scattered across the table, empty containers in the sink. The air felt stale. Charlie ran his hands through his hair. They're not patient, he said. They want their money. You mean the money you borrowed for gambling? I said calmly. He winced. I made mistakes, he admitted. Mistakes that put this family in danger. He looked down. I thought I could win it back, he said quietly. I kept thinking the next bet would fix everything. I had heard enough. That's how it traps people, I said. It makes them believe the next chance will erase the last mistake. Emily spoke softly. Charlie, did you know Dad planned to use Mom's retirement? Charlie looked up, shocked. He did what? Henry frowned. You said you needed 1.9 million fast. Yes, Charlie said. But I didn't tell you to take it from your wife. The room went still. Henry looked confused. You said you had no other options. I don't, Charlie said. But that doesn't mean you destroy your marriage for me. Something shifted. I studied his face, desperate, but not proud. You said you wouldn't go down alone, I said. He swallowed. I was angry. I didn't mean it like that. What did you mean? He hesitated. If I turn myself in, he said slowly, I might have to name the people running the betting ring. That could cause bigger problems. So it went deeper than we thought. You're involved more than you said, I replied. He nodded weakly. I looked at Henry. This isn't just debt, this is criminal. Henry's shoulders dropped. Charlie sat down heavily. I'm tired, he whispered. Tired of running, tired of being scared. Then stop running, I said. He looked up. You need a lawyer, and you need to go to the police. That's the only way this ends. Emily squeezed my hand. Charlie, we can't keep living like this. His eyes filled with tears. I didn't want to drag you into this. But you did, I said gently. So now we fix it the right way. Silence filled the room. Then finally he nodded. I'll go with you, he said. Henry looked at him, surprised. You're serious? Yes, Charlie said quietly. I can't keep living like this. As we left the apartment, something inside me shifted. For the first time since that night in the kitchen, I felt a small sense of hope. But hope is fragile. When we arrived home, something felt off. The front door was slightly open. I froze. Henry stepped ahead of me. We locked it, Emily whispered. The door creaked as he pushed it open. At first, everything looked normal. Then I saw it. The desk drawer where I kept my documents was pulled out. Papers scattered across the floor. My heart dropped. Someone had been inside. Emily covered her mouth. Mom, did they take anything? I rushed to the desk and checked. The trust documents were gone. And on the table, one single sheet of paper left behind. 4 words written in thick, dark ink. Last chance to pay. I stared at those words longer than I should have. Not because I didn't understand them, but because I did. That's when fear stopped working on me. Something colder took over. Henry looked at me, his face pale. "They broke into our house," he whispered. "They weren't just watching anymore. They were sending a message." The fear came back stronger this time, sharper, closer, because this wasn't just about money anymore. This was about safety. And then something colder settled in. They thought they could scare me into handing it over. They didn't know me. They didn't know what I was willing to do next. I stood in the middle of the living room, staring at the empty drawer. For a moment, I felt small. They had been in my home, touched my things, taken what mattered, and they believed that would be enough. Emily's voice trembled. "Mom, what do we do?" Henry looked lost, repeating under his breath, "This is my fault." Maybe it started with him. Maybe it started with Charlie. But in that moment, one thing became clear. This ends now. I picked up my phone and called the police again. This time, I told them everything: the threats, the debt, the car, the break-in, the missing documents. They arrived quickly, moved through the house carefully, photographs, fingerprints, questions. One of the officers looked at me. "Mrs. Sterling, this is serious. They're escalating." Escalating. It meant it wasn't stopping, but neither was I. Right there, in front of them, I called Diane Mercer. "They took the physical papers," I said, "but the trust is secured digitally too." "Right?" "Yes," she replied calmly. "Those documents alone mean nothing without your authorization. Your assets are still protected." Relief came, but only partially. Because this wasn't just about money anymore. It was about my family. That afternoon, we went to the station with Charlie. He looked pale, but he didn't run. "I'm ready," he told the detective. "I'll give you names. I'll explain how it works." The detective listened carefully. Charlie answered everything. How he got pulled in. A friend introducing him to private games. The early wins that made it feel easy. The losses that followed, slow at first, then all at once. The borrowing, the chasing, thinking one more bet would fix it. I watched him the entire time. He didn't look angry. He didn't look defensive. He looked ashamed. And that mattered. The detective leaned back slightly. "If you cooperate fully, we may be able to reduce the damage. But this won't disappear overnight." Charlie nodded. "I understand." Henry sat beside him, quiet. For once, he wasn't trying to fix anything. He was listening. When we left the station, the sun was going down, orange and pink across the sky, like nothing had happened. Emily walked between us. "Mom," she said softly. "I'm sorry." I looked at her. "For what?" "For being angry, for letting money make me forget who you are." I stopped walking and turned to her. "Emily, I'm sorry too." Her eyes widened. "For what?" "For working so much that you felt alone." Her lips trembled. "I thought you chose your job over me." I shook my head. "Every extra shift I took was for you. Dance lessons, college, choices." She started crying again, but this time it wasn't fear. It was understanding. Henry stepped closer. "I failed both of you," he said quietly. "I let fear guide me. I tried to fix my brother's life in secret, and I broke your trust." He looked at me. "I'm sorry." The words were simple, but this time they felt real. I didn't answer right away. Trust doesn't come back in a single moment. But honesty, that was a start. The weeks that followed weren't easy. Charlie worked closely with investigators. The betting ring had already been under suspicion, and what he shared helped strengthen the case. The two men who came to our house were questioned. And then, slowly, things began to change. The black car stopped appearing on our street. Police patrols increased for a while. Nothing else went missing. Little by little, the fear loosened its grip. At home, things changed too. Henry started seeing a counselor. He admitted something he had never said out loud, that he had always felt responsible for Charlie. Their parents had died young, and somewhere along the way, Henry stepped into that role, the one who fixed everything. But no one ever taught him the difference between helping and enabling. Emily began therapy as well. She needed to untangle the anger she had carried for years about my long hours, the missed moments, and separate that from the love that had always been there. And me? I had my own lessons to face. I learned that love without boundaries can turn into sacrifice that hurts everyone. I learned that silence can be just as dangerous as betrayal. And I learned something else. Just because I was 68 didn't mean I was weak. One evening about a month later, we sat at the same dining table, the same place where those papers had once been spread out. But this time, the table was clear. No documents, no secrets, no quiet plans. I looked at Henry. "You will never touch my finances without my full knowledge again," I said calmly. "Never," he replied without hesitation. I turned to Emily. "You will build your future on your own strength, not shortcuts." She nodded. "I want to earn it." Then I made a decision that surprised both of them. I wasn't going to hide my money out of fear. Instead, I created something structured. A small education fund for Emily. It would cover courses, certifications, real growth, not luxury, not quick wins, not risky schemes. And for myself, I set something aside too. I booked a trip, alone, to the ocean. When I told them, Emily smiled softly. "You deserve that, Mom." Henry nodded. "You really do." The morning I left, I stood at the front door for a moment. The same door that had once been pounded by strangers, the same hallway where I had stood, listening to my own family plan behind my back. I took a slow breath. That day had changed everything. But it hadn't destroyed me. It forced the truth into the open. It forced boundaries into place. It forced all of us to face what we had done. Before I stepped outside, I turned back to them. "We are still a family," I said, "but family doesn't mean control. It doesn't mean silence, and it doesn't mean taking." I held their eyes. "It means respect." Emily hugged me tightly. Henry took my hand, and for the first time in a long time, I felt something steady again. Not perfect, but it was honest. As I drove away, I thought about that envelope. It had almost torn us apart. But the real test was never the money. It was trust. And if something feels wrong, don't ignore it. I did that longer than I should have. Love your family, but don't lose yourself trying to fix everyone. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do isn't fight. It's standing still and saying no. If you were in my place, would you have forgiven them or walked away for good? Tell me in the comments. If stories like this stay with you, you might want to follow for more. I'll be here. Be